So there I was, playing catch with my 8-year-old son in our front yard, you know. Normal dad stuff when this woman in a bright white SUV rolled up like she's the neighborhood sheriff. She's got this clipboard, this attitude, and apparently zero understanding of what happens when you mess with the Navy SEALs family. By the time this whole thing was over, she'd called actual police, pointed fingers at me like I was some kind of criminal, and tried to have my kid removed from my care. All because I refused to follow her ridiculous HOA demands. But here's the thing, she didn't know I've been trained to handle threats. And Karen from the HOA, she was about to become my easiest mission yet. Let me back up and set the scene for you. After 12 years in the Navy, including 4 deployments and more classified missions than I can count, I finally got my dream. A house in Maplewood Estates, this gorgeous suburban neighborhood with tree-lined streets, perfect sidewalks, and the kind of quiet that makes you forget the world can be chaotic. But getting to this point wasn't easy. My last deployment had been particularly rough. 8 months in a place I can't name, doing things I can't talk about, while Sarah held down the fort at home with Jake. She'd send me pictures of his soccer games, his school projects, his loose teeth, all those little moments that make up a childhood, and I was missing every single one. When I finally got home, Jake had grown 3 inches and learned to ride his bike without training wheels. He was shy around me for the first few days, which honestly broke my heart more than anything I'd experienced overseas. That's when Sarah and I made the decision it was time to get out. Time to find a place where we could be a real family. Sarah had been house hunting for months while I was processing my discharge papers. She'd send me photos of potential places, virtual tour, neighborhood statistics, but when I saw this one, I knew it was home. White picket fence, literally. A big oak tree in the front yard, perfect for a tire swing. The kind of place where you can actually hear birds chirping instead of helicopters. Maplewood Estates was everything we dreamed of. Kids riding bikes on safe streets, neighbors who actually talked to each other, block parties and community gardens. The American dream, served up on a silver platter. We'd been living there for exactly 3 weeks. 3 peaceful, beautiful weeks, where the biggest drama was deciding whether to plant roses or tulips in the garden bed. Sarah had already joined the neighborhood book club, and Jake had made friends with the kid next door, a boy named Marcus, who was exactly his age and shared his obsession with baseball cards. I was finally getting to do all those normal dad things I'd missed during deployments, teaching Jake how to throw a proper spiral in our backyard, helping him with his math homework at the kitchen table, building a fort in his room out of blankets and kitchen chairs, tucking him in at night without worrying about getting called away for another mission. The neighborhood felt like stepping into a Norman Rockwell painting. Mrs. Henderson from across the street would wave from her garden every morning. The teenage kid from 2 houses down would help carry our groceries without being asked. There was this sense of community that I'd honestly thought only existed in movies. Saturday morning, Jake and I were out front playing catch. He was wearing his little Cardinals jersey, the same one he'd worn to every game while I was deployed. Sarah told me later, I was in my favorite worn-out Navy t-shirt, the one that had seen better days, but somehow felt like home. The sun was shining. There was this perfect breeze carrying the scent of honeysuckle from Mrs. Henderson's garden. And, for once in my life, everything felt exactly right. Jake was getting better at catching every day. His form was improving, his confidence growing. We'd been out there for maybe an hour, just talking about baseball, school, whether he thought he might want to try out for Little League. "Dad," he said, winding up for a throw, "I'm glad you're home." Simple words, but they hit me like a freight train. All those missed bedtimes, all those holidays spent in desert camps, all those phone calls where I could hear him crying in the background because Daddy wasn't there, it all felt worth it in that moment. Jake had just made this incredible diving catch. Kid's got serious potential. When I heard the sound of tires on our driveway. Enter Karen. And I mean that literally. Her name was actually Karen. which feels almost too perfect to be true. But I swear on my service record, that's what it said on her little HOA badge. She stepped out of her pristine white Suburban like she was inspecting a crime scene. Designer. Sunglasses. Power suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. And this clipboard that she wielded like a weapon. The woman looked like she'd never had a hair out of place in her entire life. But it wasn't just her appearance that caught my attention, it was her energy. You know how some people radiate negativity. Karen had this aura that seemed to suck the joy out of everything within a 10-foot radius. The birds literally stopped chirping when she got out of her car. Karen had this walk, the 1. The I need to speak to your manager strut, with just a hint of I'm about to ruin your entire day thrown in for good measure. She surveyed our front yard like a general inspecting troops, noting every detail with the precision of someone who'd clearly made this her life's work. She was probably in her mid-40s, with that particular shade of blonde that comes from expensive salons and a level of maintenance that requires a full-time commitment. Her nails were perfect, her makeup was flawless, and she wore her authority like armor. "Excuse me," she called out, not even bothering with basic pleasantries like hello or good morning. Her voice had this sharp edge that immediately put me on alert. "Are you aware that recreational activities in front yards are strictly prohibited according to HOA bylaws, section 4.7? I'm standing there, baseball still in my hand, looking at this woman like she just told me the sky was purple. Jake stopped mid-throw, sensing the shift in atmosphere the way kids do. "I'm sorry." "What?" I asked, genuinely confused. She flipped through her clipboard with the efficiency of someone who'd clearly done this before. Each page was color-coded, tabbed, and organized with military precision. If I didn't know better, I'd have been impressed. Ball playing, frisbee throwing, any recreational activities that could potentially damage community landscaping or create noise disturbances are not permitted in front yard areas, she recited, like she was reading from a script she'd memorized. I glanced at Jake, who was looking between us with this expression that said he knew fun time was officially over. His baseball glove was hanging loose on his hand, and I could see the confusion in his eyes. "Ma'am, we're just playing catch, on our own property." Karen's eyebrows shot up like I just confessed to a felony. "Your property ends at the sidewalk." "Sir, the HOA maintains very clear guidelines about appropriate use of residential spaces." This woman was seriously trying to tell me I couldn't play catch with my son in my own front yard. A front yard that I was paying a mortgage on. A front yard that came with HOA fees I was dutifully paying every month. "I'm going to need to see some identification," she continued, clicking her pen like she was loading a weapon. "And I'll need to verify that you're actually a resident of this community." That's when I realized this wasn't just about HOA rules. This was about power. This was about someone who'd found a tiny corner of the world where she could be in charge, and she was going to milk it for everything it was worth. "I live here," I said, keeping my voice level. "We moved in 3 weeks ago." "That's what they all say," Karen muttered, making a note on her clipboard. "I'm going to need to see proof of residency, home ownership documents, and a copy of your HOA agreement." Jake tugged on my shirt. "Dad, what's happening?" I looked down at my son, saw the worrying in his eyes, and felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about bureaucracy anymore. This was about some stranger making my kid feel scared and confused in his own front yard. Now, I've dealt with hostile situations before. I've been in rooms with actual terrorists who were more reasonable than Karen was being in that moment. But here's the thing about military training: it teaches you to de-escalate when possible, assess threats accurately, and choose your battles wisely. This felt like a battle worth choosing. "Look," I said, keeping my voice calm and level, "I understand there are rules, but surely playing catch with my kid isn't." "Rules are rules," she interrupted, making a note on her clipboard with the flourish of someone who just solved world hunger. I'm going to need you to move this activity to your backyard immediately, or I'll have to issue a violation notice. A violation notice. For playing catch with my son, in America. In 22:4. Jake tugged on my shirt. Dad, should we go inside? The look on his face confused, a little scared, definitely disappointed. That's when something shifted in me. This wasn't just about some ridiculous HOA rule anymore. This was about my kid learning that some people think they can just show up and steal your happiness because they have a clipboard and an attitude. No, buddy, I said, keeping my eyes on Karen. We're not going anywhere. Karen's pen froze mid-note. Excuse me, you heard me. We're playing catch in our front yard. If you have a problem with that, you can take it up with my lawyer. That's when I saw at the moment Karen realized she'd met someone who wasn't going to be intimidated by her little power trip. Her face went through about 15 different expressions before settling on pure fury. Sir, I am the HOA compliance officer, and I have the authority to issue fines, place liens on your property, and you have the authority to do exactly nothing, I said, tossing the ball to Jake. Keep playing, son. Jake caught it but didn't throw it back. He was watching this whole exchange with the fascination of a kid who'd never seen his dad stand up to an adult before. Karen's face went through about 15 different shades of red, before settling on this particular shade of fury that I'd only seen on drill sergeants and very angry enemy combatants. I'm calling the police, she announced, whipping out her phone faster than most people draw weapons. Go ahead, I said. Tell them a Navy veteran is playing catch with his kid in his own front yard. I'm sure they'll rush right over, she started, dialing, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. Maybe she was realizing how ridiculous this was going to sound. Maybe she was wondering if she'd finally picked a fight with the wrong person. But Karen wasn't done. Oh no, she was just getting started. I'm also calling Child Protective Services, she announced, like she was dropping some kind of nuclear bomb, creating a hostile environment for a minor, exposing a child to potential legal consequences, failure to provide proper supervision. That's when I stopped being diplomatic. Ma'am, I said, and my voice had dropped to what my squad used to. Call my command tone. I'm going to give you one chance to walk away from this situation before it gets out of hand. Are you threatening me? She gasped, clutching her clipboard like it was a shield. Because I'm recording this entire conversation. She held up her phone, and sure enough, the red recording light was blinking. Karen had come prepared for war. I'm not threatening you, I said calmly. I'm giving you some free advice. You're about to make a series of phone calls that are going to waste a lot of people's time and make you look very foolish. Last chance to reconsider. But Karen was beyond reason now. She was in full Karen mode, and nothing was going to stop her from seeing this through to whatever dramatic conclusion she'd imagined. I'm calling my husband, she announced, like this was her ultimate trump card. He's a lawyer, and he's going to make sure you understand the serious legal consequences of noncompliance with HOA regulations. I looked at Jake, who was still holding the baseball, watching this whole thing unfold with wide eyes. Jake, I said, what do you think we should do? He looked at me, then at Karen, then back at me. Can we keep playing catch? Dad, absolutely we can. I tossed him the ball, and he caught it with a grin that could have lit up the entire neighborhood. Karen's eyes nearly popped out of her head. This is absolutely unacceptable, she shouted, her voice climbing to a pitch that had dogs barking 3 blocks away. I am documenting this entire incident, and you will face the full consequences of your actions. She was pacing now, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing wildly with her clipboard. I caught fragments of her conversation. ... completely belligerent ... threatening behavior ... endangering a child. That's when I heard the sirens in the distance. You have to understand something about military families. We sacrifice a lot. We miss birthdays, holidays, school plays, little league games. We spend months, sometimes years, away from the people we love most. When I was deployed, I'd wake up at 4 a.m. my time, and just to catch Jake before he left for school. I'd read him bedtime stories over video calls, watch him lose teeth through pixelated video feeds, and hear about his day through messages that Sarah would send when she thought I was having a particularly rough time. There was this one deployment where I missed Jake's entire baseball season. Sarah sent me videos of every game, every at-bat, every strikeout and home run. I watched them on my laptop in a bunker halfway around the world, and I swear I felt more homesick in those moments than I ever had facing enemy fire. And when we finally come home, when we finally get the chance to be the dads we've always wanted to be, some clipboard-wielding suburbanite thinks she can just take that away. I looked at Jake, still holding that baseball, and I saw myself at his age, wondering why some adult was yelling at his dad, wondering if maybe they'd done something wrong just by trying to have fun together. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about HOA rules or neighborhood politics. This was about every military family who's ever had to deal with people who don't understand what sacrifice looks like. People who think following arbitrary rules is more important than letting a father spend time with his son. I've been shot at, blown up, and interrogated by people who genuinely wanted to kill me. But watching my 8-year-old's face fall because some woman with a power complex decided to ruin our Saturday morning, that hit different. Jake, I said quietly, go get your mom. Tell her we need her out here. He nodded and ran toward the house, his little legs pumping as fast as they could go. I watched him disappear through the front door, and for a moment, I was transported back to all those video calls where I'd watched him run around our old apartment, wishing I could be there to chase him. Karen was still on the phone, animatedly describing how I was creating a public disturbance and refusing to comply with community standards. She was pacing back and forth in our driveway like she owned the place, her voice getting higher and more frantic with each word. Yes, I need police and child protective services, she was saying. I have a situation here with an uncooperative resident who's creating a hostile environment for a minor child. I stood there, baseball still in my hand, watching this woman try to destroy my family's Saturday morning because she didn't like seeing joy in a front yard. That's when I heard the sirens getting closer. But I also heard something else, the sound of our front door opening, and Jake's voice calling out, Mom, Dad needs you. Sarah appeared in the doorway, took one look at the scene, and I saw her face go through the same progression of emotions I'd experienced. Confusion, disbelief, and then something I'd rarely seen in 12 years of marriage, pure, protective fury. What's going on out here? She asked, her voice deceptively calm as she walked toward us. This lady called the police because Dad was playing catch with me, Jake explained, staying close to his mom's side. Sarah looked at Karen, then at the 3 police cars that were now pulling up to our house, then back at Karen. You called the police. Because my husband was playing catch with our son. The first police car came to a stop right in front of our house, followed by 2 more. Karen straightened up, clipboard in hand, ready to present her case to the authorities. 3 police cars pulled up to our house. 3, like we were running some kind of illegal gambling operation instead of playing catch. The first officer out was Sergeant Martinez, a guy I actually recognized from the local VA meetings. He took one look at me, one look at Karen still clutching her clipboard, and I saw his expression change from official concern to barely contained amusement. What seems to be the problem here? He asked, though his tone suggested he already had a pretty good idea. Karen launched into this dramatic monologue about HOA violations and uncooperative residents and potential child endangerment. She was waving her clipboard around like evidence at a trial, her voice reaching octaves that could probably shatter glass. This man is in direct violation of community standards, she declared, and when I attempted to enforce proper compliance, he became belligerent and threatening. He's created a hostile environment for that child, and I have reason to believe he may be under the influence of alcohol or narcotics. I raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, it's 10 a.m. on a Saturday. Substance abuse doesn't follow a schedule, she shot back. Sergeant Martinez looked at me with an expression that said he was fighting not to laugh. Sir, have you been drinking this morning? 2 cups of coffee, I replied, and orange juice with breakfast. Any illegal substances? Unless you count the sugar rush from the pancakes Jake and I made. No, sir. Karen's face was getting redder by the minute. He's being deliberately obstructive. He refuses to comply with clearly stated community guidelines. Ma'am, Sergeant Martinez said, his patience clearly wearing thin, what exactly was this gentleman doing when you arrived? Playing ball games in the front yard, which is clearly prohibited by HOA bylaws section 4.7, subsection C, paragraph 3. I had to admire her dedication to the bureaucracy, even in the face of 3 armed police officers who were clearly not impressed, so he was playing catch with his son. Sergeant Martinez asked. Karen's momentum faltered slightly. Well, yes, but the rules clearly state a mum in his own front yard. The HOA has jurisdiction over. Ma'am, I'm going to stop you right there. Sergeant Martinez turned to me. Sir, are you the homeowner? Yes, officer. We moved in 3 weeks ago. Any noise complaints from neighbors? No, sir. Any property damage? No, sir. Any actual safety concerns? No, sir. Any previous issues with this ... compliance officer? I looked at Karen, who was practically vibrating with indignation. This is our first meeting. Sergeant Martinez nodded, then turned back to Karen. Ma'am, playing catch with your child in your own front yard is not a crime. It's not a violation of any city ordinance. And it's certainly not child endangerment, but the HOA rules are not criminal law, interrupted Officer Patterson, the younger cop who'd gotten out of the second car. Civil disputes between homeowners and HOA boards are handled through civil courts, not criminal complaints. That's when Sarah stepped forward, and I could see she was done being diplomatic. Excuse me, officers, she said, her voice carrying that particular edge that meant someone was about to get educated. I'm Sarah. This is my husband, Mike. And that's our son, Jake. We've lived in this neighborhood for 3 weeks, and this is the first time we've met ... I'm sorry. What's your name? Karen Mitchell, HOA compliance officer. Karen replied, puffing up like she was introducing herself to the Queen of England. Karen, right. Well, Karen, in the 3 weeks we've lived here, we've met the neighbors, joined the book club, had barbecues with the family next door, and my husband has been playing catch with our son in our front yard every single day without a single complaint from anyone. Sarah was on a roll now, and I could see the officers were enjoying the show. In fact, Sarah continued, Mrs. Henderson from across the street specifically told me how nice it was to see a father spending time with his child. She said it reminded her of when her own kids were young. Karen's clipboard was shaking in her hands. The rules are the rules, and they apply to everyone equally. Ma'am, Sergeant Martinez said, did you call 911 to report this? I called the police because this man refused to comply with a direct order from an HOA official. Ma'am, HOA officials don't give orders. They're not law enforcement. They're essentially community volunteers with very limited authority. Officer Patterson stepped forward. Ma'am, you called 911 to report a father playing catch with his son. You realize that's a misuse of emergency services. Karen's confidence finally started to crack. Misuse. I witnessed inappropriate supervision and potential child endangerment. You witnessed a dad playing catch with his kid, Patterson said. That's not inappropriate supervision. That's called being a good parent. I also called Child Protective Services, Karen announced proudly, like she was playing her ace in the hole. That's when the third officer, a sergeant named Williams, spoke up. Ma'am, filing a false report with CPS is actually a crime, a serious crime. especially when it involves fabricating claims about child endangerment. I watched Karen's face go through about 12 different expressions as she realized that her power trip was about to become a legal nightmare. False report, she sputtered. I witnessed inappropriate supervision. You witnessed a father playing catch with his son in his own front yard, Williams said. That's not inappropriate supervision. That's not child endangerment. That's not even a civil violation worth mentioning. But the HOA rules are not criminal law, all three officers said in unison, like they'd rehearsed it. Sergeant Martinez pulled out his citation book. Ma'am, I'm going to need to see some identification. Why? Karen asked, her voice climbing an octave. Because you've just admitted to making false reports to both emergency services and child protective services. That's a misdemeanor in this state. I watched Karen's face go from red to white to green as she realized that her attempt to get me in trouble had backfired spectacularly. I want to speak to your supervisor, she announced, playing her final card. Mum, Sergeant Martinez said with a smile. I am the supervisor. That's when Jake, who'd been watching this whole thing with the fascination of a kid seeing his first circus, spoke up. Dad, can we keep playing catch now? I looked at the officers, who all nodded. Absolutely, buddy. Jake ran to get his glove, and I tossed him the ball. He caught it with a grin that could have lit up the entire neighborhood. Karen stood there, citation in hand, watching an 8-year-old boy play catch with his dad while 3 police officers made small talk about the weather. This is ridiculous, she muttered, stomping back to her white Suburban. I'll be contacting my lawyer about this entire incident. Mum, Officer Patterson called out. You might want to contact your lawyer about that citation you just received instead. Karen slammed her car door and peeled out of our driveway with the kind of dramatic flair that would have been impressive if it hadn't been so pathetic. As her car disappeared around the corner, Sergeant Martinez walked over to me. Navy? He asked, nodding at my t-shirt. 12 years, I replied. Thank you for your service. And for being a good dad. He handed me his business card. If she gives you any more trouble, call me directly. We get a lot of calls from folks who think having a clipboard makes them law enforcement. This happens often, more than you'd think. Usually ends the same way someone with too much time on their hands learns that being a busybody in a crime-fighting technique. The officers packed up and left, but not before Jake ran over to show them his catching technique. They were genuinely impressed, and Officer Patterson even gave him some tips on his throwing form. As their cars disappeared down the street, I realized that our quiet Saturday morning had turned into something much more significant. It wasn't just about playing catch anymore. It was about standing up for what matters, protecting your family, and not letting anyone, no matter how official they think they are, steal your joy. Any noise complaints from neighbors? No, sir. Any property damage? No, sir. Any actual safety concerns? No, sir. Sergeant Martinez nodded, then turned back to Karen. Mum, playing catch with your child in your own front yard is not a crime. It's not a violation of any city ordinance. And it's certainly not child endangerment. That's when Sarah came out, still in her Saturday morning yoga clothes, with Jake right behind her. What's going on? She asked, taking in the scene 3 police cars, Karen with her clipboard, me standing there holding a baseball. This lady called the police because I was playing catch with Jake. I explained. Sarah's expression went through its own fascinating transformation. She looked at Karen, then at the police cars, then back at Karen. You called the police. Because my husband was playing catch with our son. HOA rules, Karen started. Are you kidding me? Sarah's voice had this dangerous edge that I recognized from the few times I'd seen her truly angry. You called the police on a Navy SEAL for playing catch with his kid. And that's when Karen made her biggest mistake. I don't care if he's Navy, Army, or the President of the United States, she said, her voice rising. Rules are rules, and I have the authority to enforce them. Sergeant Martinez, who had been trying to keep things civil, just shook his head. Ma'am, you called 911 to report a father playing catch with his son. You realize that's a misuse of emergency services. I also called Child Protective Services, Karen announced proudly. That's when the second officer, a younger guy named Patterson, spoke up. Ma'am, filing a false report with CPS is actually a crime, especially when it involves fabricating claims. About child endangerment, Karen's confidence finally started to crack. False report. I witnessed inappropriate supervision. You witnessed a dad playing catch with his kid? Patterson said. That's not inappropriate supervision. That's called being a good parent. Here's how it all ended. And trust me, it gets better. Karen got a citation for misusing emergency services. Turns out, calling 911 because you don't like someone playing catch is actually illegal. Who knew? She also got a second citation for making false reports to Child Protective Services, which carries a fine of up to $500 and potential community service. The CPS call got dismissed so fast it barely existed. When the caseworker called me back the next day, she literally apologized for having to follow up at all. Sir, she said, in 15 years of doing this job, I've never had a complaint about a father playing catch with his son. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. But here's where it gets really interesting. 2 days later, we got a knock on our door. It was Mrs. Henderson from across the street, along with the couple from next door, the family from 3 houses down, and about 6 other neighbors I'd only waved to in passing. We heard about what happened, Mrs. Henderson said, and we wanted you to know that woman doesn't speak for this neighborhood. Turns out, Karen had been the neighborhood menace for months. She'd cited people for having their garbage cans out 15 minutes past pickup time. She'd tried to fine a family for their Halloween decorations being too festive. She'd actually called the police on a teenager for skateboarding on the sidewalk. We've been trying to get her removed from the HOA board for months, said Tom, the guy from next door, but we needed documentation of her overreach. Your incident was the final straw. The HOA board held an emergency meeting that Wednesday. I didn't even have to attend. Half the neighborhood showed up to testify about Karen's reign of terror. She was unanimously voted out of her position, and the board issued a formal apology to our family. But wait, it gets better. The next Saturday, Jake and I were out front playing catch again, because of course we were when we heard the sound of kids laughing. I looked up to see Marcus from next door running over with his glove, followed by 2 other kids from down the street. Can we play too? Marcus asked. The more the merrier. I said. Within an hour, we had 8 kids and 4 dads playing catch in our front yard. Mrs. Henderson brought out lemonade. Someone's mom showed up with a cooler of water bottles. What started as a simple game of catch turned into an impromptu neighborhood block party. Jake was in heaven. He was running around, laughing, teaching the younger kids how to catch, getting tips from the older ones. This was what I dreamed about during those long deployments, my son being part of a real community, surrounded by people who cared about him. Dad, he said, running over to me between plays, this is the best day ever. That's when I noticed the white Suburban driving slowly past our house. Karen was back, probably documenting our violation of having too much fun in a front yard. But you know what? This time, she didn't stop. She didn't get out. She just drove past, and I saw her looking at our little neighborhood gathering with something that might have been envy. Here's the thing about Bully Zand, that's what Karen was. Clipboard or no clipboard, they operate from a place of fear and isolation. They try to control other people because they can't control their own unhappiness. Looking at our group of neighbors, kids laughing, families connecting, I realized that Karen had actually done us a favor. Her attempt to break up our family time had brought the whole neighborhood together. The next week, Tom approached me about starting a neighborhood baseball league. Nothing too serious, he said. Just weekend games, hot dogs, family fun. You Interested in helping coach, I looked at Jake, who was practically bouncing with excitement at the idea. "Count us in," I said. 3 months later, we had a full league going. 12 teams, kids aged 6 to 16, parents volunteering as coaches and umpires. We played every Saturday morning in the park, and afterward, families would gather for picnics and barbecues. Jake made the all-star team, not because his dad was a coach, but because he genuinely gotten good at baseball. All those hours of playing catch in the front yard had paid off, but the best part, during one of our games, I noticed a familiar white Suburban parked across the street. Karen was sitting in her car, watching the game through her windshield. She'd been there for 3 Saturdays in a row, just watching. I walked over and tapped on her window. She rolled it down, looking embarrassed and defensive at the same time. "Hi, Karen," I said. "I'm not doing anything wrong," she said immediately. "I'm parked on a public street." "I know. I was just wondering if you'd like to come watch from the stands. We've got folding chairs, and Mrs. Henderson always brings extra cookies." She looked at me like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. "Why would you ... after what I did ... double quotes, because everyone deserves to be part of a community," I said. "Even compliance officers." She didn't come that day, or the next week, but the week after that, I saw her sitting in the far corner of the bleachers, still clutching a clipboard, but actually watching the game. Jake hit a triple that day, his first of the season. As he rounded second base, he looked over at the stands and waved. Not at us, not at his mom, but at everyone, including Karen. She waved back. 6 months later, Karen approached me after one of our games. "I owe you an apology," she said. "I was wrong about ... well, everything. I was just ... I don't know. Angry, I guess, at everyone." "We've all been there," I said. "I've been thinking about what you said about community. I'd like to help with the league, if you'll have me. I'm actually pretty good at organizing things." I looked at her clipboard, which was now covered in baseball statistics and game schedules instead of violation notices. "We could use someone to manage the tournament brackets," I said. "I'd like that." Jake ran over, grass-stained and grinning. "Dad, did you see that catch I made?" "I did. Buddy, you're getting pretty good at this baseball thing." "Karen taught me how to calculate batting averages," he said proudly. "She's really good at math." I looked at Karen, who was smiling, actually smiling for the first time since I'd met her. "Who would have thought?" I said. "Not me," she replied. "Definitely not me." That's when I realized something important. The real victory wasn't getting Karen fired from the HOA board or watching her get those citations. The real victory was seeing my son grow up in a neighborhood where people looked out for each other, where kids could play in front yards without fear, where even the neighborhood compliance officer could learn to be part of the community instead of just policing it. Every Saturday morning, Jake and I still play catch in our front yard. It's become our tradition, our special time together. But now, instead of it being just the two of us, it's become the unofficial start of neighborhood baseball day. Kids show up with their gloves. Parents bring coffee and donuts. Mrs. Henderson still makes lemonade, though she's upgraded to a bigger pitcher. And yes, sometimes Karen stops by with her clipboard, but now it's full of game schedules and team rosters instead of violation notices. Last week, Jake asked me something that really made me think. "Dad, why do you think Karen was so mean before?" I thought about it for a moment. "I think she was lonely, buddy. Sometimes when people are lonely, they try to control things instead of trying to connect with people. But she's not lonely anymore." "No," I said, watching Karen help a group of kids practice their batting stance. "She's not lonely anymore." "Good," Jake said. "Everyone should have friends to play catch with." Out of the mouths of babes. Right. Have you ever dealt with a real-life Karen who thought their authority was more important than common sense? Someone who tried to stop you from just living your life and enjoying time with your family, drop a comment and tell me your story. I want to hear about the time you stood up to a bully with a clipboard, and if you enjoyed watching Corinne transform from neighborhood menace to community member, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about entitled people learning that the world doesn't revolve around their rule book, because sometimes the best defense against a power trip is just being a good parent, a good neighbor, and a good person. Sometimes it's showing someone that community ain't about control, it's about connection. Trust me, I'm trained for this, and so are you.